All right, what we're working on today are called if-then statements and deductive reasoning. So those of you that like the title, there's the title. And I see Kylie's worksheet here. We worked on some of these problems the last couple of days. Remember that this is due tomorrow? We've been working on it. So maybe I better put a reminder up here. Finish your algebra review. That should be about finished. We've worked on it a little at a time. How's yours? It's done? Almost? No? Austin, how's your solving? We wrote it down, so it's not used.
What?
Math worksheet? So it's not too far. All right, not too many have work to do on that, but a few of you do. All right, here's some terms. We're going to work with what's called an if-then statement today. An if-then statement is simply called a conditional statement that contains the words if and then. Contains the words if and then. The hypothesis is the if part. The hypothesis is the statement that follows the word if. It's the information that you begin with, or the situation that you begin with. So an if-then might say, if a number is even, then it's divisible by 2. So you have to start with an even number. The conclusion is the statement that follows the word then. It's like the result that happens. So in my example, if a number is even, then it's divisible by 2. Divisible by 2 is the conclusion. What class have you heard the word hypothesis in besides this one? Science class. What's it mean in science?
An educated guess.
An educated guess. So that's kind of like saying what you think is going to happen as a result. Notice that that would really be what we call the conclusion. So same word, kind of completely opposite meaning in science and in logic, in math. So you have to work on memorizing what it is here and what it is there, and know in the context of what you're doing, which definition is the correct one. So the hypothesis is what we begin with, and the conclusion is what we end with. If you have the sentence written with the words if and then, if it's written as a conditional, then it's real easy to pick out what's the hypothesis, what's the conclusion. If it's not, we're going to try and reword it so it is in a sentence that has if and then. Jean, is that close enough for you? So think of some if-then sentences. If what, then what? A few examples. Appropriate for school. They don't necessarily have to be true, just an if-then statement.
What if?
No, not what if, just if.
If I get an F on my paper, then I will get in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, did he give me an if then? Yeah, after I told him the word if and then.
Well,
Okay,
I
so,
said what if and then I guess you
so what was, think about the sentence he said. What was the hypothesis? getting an F on his paper. What's the conclusion? Get in trouble. You came up with one, what's another one? If then. Fulton, create something.
I'm not very creative.
What happens?
That's not what you were on.
What happens if a cow dies?
If what?
If a cow dies.
If a cow dies, then
Call the dead wagon?
all of what?
The dead wagon?
I'll call the dead wagon, okay? So what's the hypothesis?
If the cow dies.
And technically not the word if, but the cow dies, okay? Just that statement. And then the conclusion,
Then the death wagon, or the death wagon.
yeah, call the death wagon.
Oh, that's what he
The
says.
dead cow wagon.
Oh.
The dead wagon, okay. So we're creating a few if-thens, and we're picking out the hypothesis and conclusion. Okay, now some sentences are not really in an if-then format, but if we can put it into the if-then, then it's real easy to pick out the hypothesis and conclusion. So, can you see on the green background here, okay?
Hey, it's Christmas time.
Yeah, it is Christmas colors. Must have been Christmas when I made it. Okay, it says, I will get wet if it is raining. Now, do you see the word if? Do you see the word then? No. So let's say the sentence with the words if and then.
If it is raining, then I will get wet.
Okay, correct. Since the word if was there already, we knew that that was the hypothesis part. So the hypothesis, it is raining. Conclusion, I will get wet.
So is this English class?
Right now it is. Okay, now this one doesn't have the word if or then. Whales are mammals.
If whales, then are mammals.
Okay, now let's add a few words. He's got the basic idea. He's got the basic idea, but we need to make a sentence that makes sense. So he wants to say something about whales and then mammals. Okay, so how can we make it make sense as a sentence? If an animal is a whale, then
they are mammals.
it is a mammal. So we could add a few words that doesn't change the meaning of it, but makes it make sense as a sentence. Now what he did correct was he came up with whales as the hypothesis and mammals as the conclusion. Correct. Okay. All right, let's try all jeans are blue. Think about it. Think about it. I'm not saying true or false. How would you put that in a sentence that has the words if and then that makes sense and doesn't change the meaning of it? And you might kind of look at the one just above it, and that might give you a few ideas. You probably don't want to say if an animal is, but if what, then what?
I think an animal.
You have to add a few words. Think you got it, Brandon?
If you have jeans, then they are blue.
Did you get hypothesis and conclusion correct? You did. A
Okay.
little bit different version. Now some, I guess, yeah, you want the idea if jeans then blue, but you had to make it make sense, okay? If there are jeans, then they are blue. Okay, next screen. What we're doing is deductive reasoning. Using if-then statements is one way to do what's called did I say inductive?
No, you said deductive.
Deductive, okay. Deductive reasoning. We did inductive already. Chapter 1, we did inductive reasoning. Brains remind you what inductive reasoning was? What were we looking at? We were doing some predicting what comes next.
It's something reasoning through patterns.
It was through patterns, right. Reasoning through patterns, basically. Now, deductive reasoning isn't using patterns. It's using facts, definitions, accepted properties, and the laws of logic to make a logical argument or logical conclusion, logical conjecture. We use that term in the first chapter. When you're doing deductive reasoning, you're just looking at different things. You're not looking at a pattern. You're looking at facts. Maybe the fact that you have to be 16 to have a driver's license. Maybe the fact that you have to stop at a stop sign. You know, certain laws or facts, that's what you're basing conclusions on. As we go through geometry, we're going to use facts about geometric shapes. And that's really part of geometry, is we're using geometry as a basis to develop our deductive thinking, so that we can draw conclusions based upon a set of information. Now, in your real life, are you going to make deductive reasoning decisions? Definitely. Will it be based on geometry concepts? Maybe not. But it's going to be based on maybe more real life laws and rules of your community, of your government, of your family. So the kind of thinking we're doing is just training your brain to think that way. We're just right now using math as our basis for the rules. Question or comment? All right, everybody's got that? All right, one of the laws of logic that we can use is called law of detachment. There's a pattern as far as the information. Okay, get the beginning part and then we'll talk through the smaller print. It says, if the hypothesis of a true if-then statement is true, then the conclusion is also true. If the hypothesis of a true if-then statement is true, then the conclusion is also true. When we discuss this in regular geometry, I do some symbols, and so I'll show you those same things for the fine print here. It says we have an if-then statement. That's called a conditional. We defined that today. If statement P, then statement Q is true. If we know that statement P is true, the logical result is that the statement Q must be true. And in symbols, that would mean if P, then Q being true. P is true. I was going to write the wrong thing. P is true. Therefore, we can come up with Q is true. Okay. So this has to be true to start with. So you can't just make up a nonsense thing for this one. Okay, so I tried to make an example that is true. If the number 10 is even, then it is divisible by 2. So that's a true statement. The number 10 is even. That's a true statement also. So putting those thoughts together, well, if the number 10 was even, it said it's divisible by 2, so logically 10 is divisible by 2. This thinking process is referred to as the law of detachment. Looks like everyone's got the notes down. Let's try looking at another one. If it is Labor Day, then there is no school. True?
Yes, true.
Right. It is Labor Day. Well, we should have said this on Monday, but it is Labor Day, we'll say is true. So then what conclusion can you come up with?
True, there is no school.
There is no school, correct. So if it's Labor Day, there's no school. It is Labor Day, so there is no school. That's your conclusion. How about if your iPod volume is on high, then your hearing will be destroyed. John's iPod volume is on high. John's hearing will be destroyed. Correct. Now it's just using the sequence that is up here. Makes sense? Do we need to do a bunch more? If it is raining, then I will get wet. It is raining. I'll get wet. How about if it is raining, then I get wet? I got wet. That doesn't follow the pattern.
Yep.
What did I switch up on that last one?
You put,
Okay, I said if it is raining, or did I say, yeah. If it is raining, then I get wet. Just abbreviating. And then I said I got wet.
you put the conclusion.
I put the conclusion here instead of the hypothesis. Okay. So this would be no, conclusion. You really can't come up with anything because this was the wrong fact. What did I need to say right there?
If it is.
It is raining, right? So we're looking for the pattern as far as the information. Don't get tricked up. What if I said, if it is raining, then I get wet? It is not raining.
False. No conclusion.
No conclusion again, because I needed to say it was raining, and instead I
You will get
said it's not raining. So we need to watch out for some of those tricky ones on some of our future examples. Okay, let's try the law of syllogism. And get the, I guess I put fine print, put the sentence up here, and then we'll talk about the rest of it. Law of syllogism. I think syllogism's kind of a funny little word, syllogism. Two if-then statements can be combined into one if-then statement if the ideas link in a specific way. If the ideas link in a specific way. So again, we have to analyze the equations or sentences and make sure that they have the correct link in their statements. Linking in a specific way. There has to be a statement that is the conclusion of one sentence and the hypothesis of another sentence. So if you read them in the order so that that link is kind of beside each other, you can see how they connect. So we're going to have a statement P, then Q, and then another sentence that has that same Q, then R. So if it is raining, then I get wet. If I get wet, then I need a towel. So then you can come up with, if it is raining, then I need a towel. How many of you have heard of the books, If I Give a Mouse a Cookie, If I Give a Moose a Muffin, If I Give a Pig a Pancake? Those are good examples of syllogism. Because doesn't it have like a chain reaction along the way? If you give a mouse a cookie, then he's gonna want milk, okay? If he wants milk, then
He's gonna get hyper.
he's gonna get hyper. If he gets hyper, then,
He's
gonna
gonna
crash.
run into
So-
the wall.
so there's a whole series of things.
You want to kill them.
And so basically,
Of course you do.
basically they're saying if you give the mouse a cookie, then whatever the ending of the story is gonna happen, okay? That's the idea of syllogism. So here's an example. If you're ill on a school day, then you miss school. If you miss school, then you have an assignment to make up.
In high school, they don't.
So if you are ill on a school day, then you have an assignment to make up. So notice that this you missed school was the conclusion there and the hypothesis here. That's the connection between the two sentences. All right, so let's try some. If you go to geometry, then you get an assignment. If you get an assignment, then you need study time. Put that together, what's the if-then you can get based on syllogism? Did you see the repeated idea?
I think I got it. If you go to geometry, then you get an assignment. If you get an assignment, then you need study time.
So then what? You just read what's up there. What's the if-then I can create? What's the P part?
Then, if you get an assignment,
If you go to geometry,
if you go to
Then
geometry,
you get an assignment.
no, that's what it says already.
Then,
Oh,
you,
if-
then you need study time.
then-
Okay,
Yeah.
then you need study time.
wait, why? When you need the assignment, don't you?
Okay, what we're saying is by syllogism, that assignment fact, conclusion, hypothesis connects it, and you can leave it out, P then Q. This repeated thing connects the two if-thens, so we can make an if-then, like leaving that middle fact out, sense at all?
No.
No? Okay, go back to this one. If you're ill on the school day, then you miss school. If you miss school, then you have an assignment to make up. So basically, if you are ill on a school day, then you will have an assignment to make up.
Oh, okay, I got it now.
So this one was doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If the battery is dead, then it needs charged. If the battery needs charged, then it must be placed in the recharger.
If the battery is dead, then it must be placed on the
It must be placed in the recharger. Okay,
I
thumbs
got
up or down, who's understanding that?
It's
Got it?
easy now.
It's easy once you.
All
thought about it a
you
little
basically have to do is draw a line from that one to that
From the
one.
beginning.
more.
yeah.
From this one to
To
that one,
Yeah.
as
So
long,
basically it's diagonal.
as long as this is the same fact.
Mhm.
Now, if I wanna really make it more difficult, I'll switch the two sentences.
Oh.
Please don't.
I'm sure I'll have that in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, if the sun is shining, then the grass grows. If the grass grows, then someone needs to mow.
The sun is
If the
shining,
sun
then
is-
someone needs to mow.
The sun is shining, then
Someone needs to mow.
someone needs to mow. Okay, I'm hearing it from over here. You guys are telling me you're good? All right. I'm just not speaking up. All right, and then there's a contrapositive. If statement P, then statement Q is true. So you're gonna have an if-then statement. And then not Q is true. So remember the one up here, we were coming up with a no conclusion? Well, there is one more way you can get a conclusion. If you use the conclusion of the sentence, but negate it. Negate it, meaning not whatever. If you negate the conclusion, then that means the negation of the hypothesis would have to be true. We'll take a look at an example. Negation, when I use symbols, the squiggle thing that we've used is in logic used for negation. So if P then Q, not Q, therefore not P is true. Look at the example if you're done writing your notes. Does that make sense? If Mrs. Frank is gone, then there is a substitute teacher. There is not a substitute teacher.
Doesn't make sense.
So Mrs. Frank is not gone.
Oh, okay.
Because if I were gone,
There.
there'd be a substitute, but there's not a substitute. I'm not gone. So this is called the law of contrapositive. Brandon, got what you need?
Yeah.
Okay. If it is summer, then I am wearing sandals. I am not wearing sandals.
It's not
It's
summer.
not summer.
It is not summer.
Jeez, simple as that.
If the dog is barking, then the neighbors are awake. The neighbors are not awake.
The
The
dog
dog's
isn't
not
barking.
Correct.
Jeez.
If x equals 2, then 5x equals 10. But 5x does not equal 10,
So then x doesn't equal 2.
so x does not equal 2. You think you got it?
I don't know.
Watch out for these. If it is cold, then my hands get dried out. My hands got dried out.
Then it is cold.
Nope. Hands could get dried out for another reason. So it just said that if this comes first, then your hands will get dried out second. So since I gave you this fact, that doesn't tell you anything.
Maybe it's not cold.
Right? Might be cold, might not be cold. So that's one of those tricky ones. If If it is warm, then students wear t-shirts. It's not warm,
Students wear sweatshirts.
they could wear something other than a t-shirt. It tells me, the sentence only tells me what happens if it is warm. It doesn't tell me what happens if it's not warm. So we need to kind of watch out for those. I gotta.
Rotating.
Yeah. Something like that. So the fact is, you can't make a definite conclusion.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, before we go to our quiz, I had a few more samples on here. Let's pick a few and see if we really do have this logic stuff figured out. We'll just pick a few so that we have time to do our. No, this is not the homework for tonight. There will be some out of the book. All right, so let's see if we really got this according to some of our samples.
Hey, you got a dog on the tip of your nose.
All right, so what happens on the first ones? The first ones, it said rewrite it as an if